I've gotten to know this gentleman quite a bit over the last year. His name is Jordan Kivelstadt, and he has joined MSIV as their first venture partner. Did that earlier this year. And he's been building his own company since college. He pioneered Wine on Tap by co-founding Free Flow Wines and grew that company to over 100 employees, and it was acquired back in 2016. Since then, he's built multiple businesses out of Sonoma County. I would love to tell you about him, but I don't want to steal his thunder, so put your hands together for Jordan.
Hi, everybody. Let's see. Awesome. I'm Jordan Kivelstadt, and that seems really loud. I'm a loud human. Is that too loud? So I'm here to talk to you about what we've done here in Sonoma. Well, we're in Marin, but let's say the North Bay, and tell you a little about my personal history and story. So give you just my background. I grew up in San Francisco. I moved to Boston for school. I went to Tufts. Little Medford shout out there. And I was a pre-med student, and junior year I got a little freaked out and decided maybe med school wasn't the track. I was studying entrepreneurship at the time. We was one of 12 students doing the entrepreneurial leadership program. And so I went into management consulting. And then I did that for 3 years, and the story I always tell is I built the national pricing model for Effexor. How many people know what Effexor is? It's a SNRI, it's an antidepressant. And I came back to the drug manufacturer and I said, well, if you increase price 6%, you're only going to lose 2%. So we've optimized. And then I realized 15,000 people would no longer get their antidepressant. And I was like, I'm out. I'm done. And I came back to California and I was trying to figure out what I want to do next. I've been building spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations for a long time, and I want to get my hands dirty. I want to make something. And I had lunch with a friend and he said, hey, you ever thought about making wine? And I said, yeah, I thought of becoming a race car driver too, but like not in the cards. And he ended up hooking me up with a harvest internship, which is where you go and you spend 3 months making wine. And I did that at the Donham Estate, and I just fell in love. Took me all over the world making wine in my late 20s. And while I was in Argentina, I had this crazy idea. I'd been in the wine industry, and I was like, bottles are really dumb. And if I said to you, go spend 2 years of your life, love, energy, artisanal creation into this product, put in glass, shove dead tree bark in the top, and sell it to people, would you think that's a good idea? Is that the optimum way to take this artisanal product and bring it to the consumer? So I'll talk a lot about it in a second. I went and founded Free Flow, spent 10 years building that and sold it. And then had another wine company I started called Essentially Geared. Again, we'll talk about it in a sec. And that leads me to where I am today, where I run Trellis Management, which is my hospitality management company. We have a restaurant and a winery and a tour company. I am extremely excited to have joined MSIV this year as a venture partner. And I'm on the Economic Development Board of Sonoma County. So have a lot of thoughts on economic development here. So let's talk about Free Flow. The idea. I talked a little bit about dead tree bark in a bottle, but bottles are also really heavy. 70% of the carbon footprint of the wine industry comes from our packaging. And on top of that, how many of you have ever been to a restaurant, looked on the back bar, seen that bottle of Cabernet with the sun beating down on it and wondered, how long has it been open? How warm is that wine going to be? And is it good anymore? And you know what? They pour it to you anyway. And the worst part is you have a bad experience. And it wasn't the winemaker's fault. It was style of service. So the idea was, can we put it in kegs? So we launched a brand called SilverTap. Raised $1 million on the idea of wine on tap. We created a brand, launched it in 20 states, and that was great. The reception was huge. People loved the concept. But the problem is, you go to a restaurant, you need more than 3 or 4 options from the same company. So we quickly realized that we were building a category, not a brand. And we were going to have to change the whole perception of wine on tap and what it meant to people. So we pivoted. And in 2011, we had Free Flow Wines, a packaging logistics company that actually helped other wineries put their wines in keg and helped restaurants install wine on tap. And then we had SilverTap. And we ended up selling SilverTap and really focusing on this packaging and logistics company. Because at the end of the day, that was where we were. We were going to enable a category, not just a brand. And we started growing. We raised more money. This was a very capital-intensive business. We went from a garage to a 2,000 square foot space, to a 20,000 square foot space, to an 80,000 square foot space. And that was unbelievably capital intensive. At the same time, we're trying to build and change an entire national culture. And if anybody wants to talk about lobbying, I got to change the law in Florida. It was a really amazing experience. I'm happy to share with anybody. And on top of that, we had to figure out innovative ways to fund the business because we're building this in Sonoma. And revolutionary concepts like this, especially in an industry that's as staid and true as the wine industry, just didn't resonate with people. And I'll talk about a little bit later some of the specific challenges to building in the North Bay that I encountered in doing this. But we grew. We put in some really amazing automation to address some of the labor shortages. And then we kept innovating. We got into canned wine. You can see that big old canning line. We put the first dedicated wine canning line in the world. It was really incredible. We actually partnered with Ball. So imagine this. You're a $10 million Sonoma startup working with a Global 500 company on a partnership. It was a very interesting learning experience for me, I'll put it that way. But we were able to help seed all of that. The challenge was we're here in the North Bay. We're super capital intensive. Access to traditional debt didn't exist. So we had to keep funding it and figuring it out. And we had to find people. And people who were understanding complex logistics, technology, all of these things. It was just this perpetual challenge for us to find and staff and grow at the rate we were. So eventually, in 2016, we reached a point where I couldn't secure the kind of debt we needed to expand. And the reality was this business that wasn't going to become an overnight success. I'll never forget, we were working with a big national restaurant chain. And I was working with them to put taps into 450 restaurants around the country. It was going to be their whole Buy the Glass program. It was going to revolutionize our company, take it all over. I'd worked on it for 2 years. We had all the capital lined up. We had the partners lined up. Literally, the document to move it forward was sitting on the president's desk, and he got fired that week. And guess what? We went right back to square one. And so, these are the kind of challenges you talk to any entrepreneur. We all have those moments. Helen was saying one earlier, your biggest client, disappears. These are the kind of things that as entrepreneurs, we all know, we've all overcome, and it will happen. So when we got to our exit point, what we did was find a partner who believed passionately in what we were building, gave us the capital we needed, and allowed the company to continue growing. Was it life-changing for me? No. But over 10 years of my life, did I learn an incredible amount? Did I build an incredible network? And did I learn about what in the North Bay we faced that makes it hard to grow companies? And now I'm really excited that I get to be part of helping the next generation of entrepreneurs continue to grow and build here. So let's talk about another one of those learning lessons along the way. I mentioned that we sold, or actually Mike mentioned that we sold the company in 2016. I stayed on until 2019, and then I left. And in 2017, after the writing was on the walls, I co-founded another company. As I mentioned, Free Flow had gotten really into the wine canning business, and I believed passionately in the sustainability of aluminum. So we talked about kegs. Free Flow has helped take 70 million pounds of bottle waste out of landfills, and aluminum is the most recycled product in the country. When you throw an aluminum can in your recycling bin, it is back on the shelf as a new aluminum product within 90 days in the US. It's an incredible, incredible cycle that aluminum has. So we said, hey, wouldn't it be fun if for those use occasions, you heard from Nick, like there's a lot of people that want to get outside and enjoy products. Let's give them a use occasion based product that's still of quality, still actually is what they're looking for their picnic, their beach, all of that. So I co-founded Essentially Geared, and you can see the whole premise was playful, make wine fun, build a use occasion that makes sense. And we were having great success. We made two big mistakes in this company. The first one was own local. I'm a huge proponent of this for startups now. If you are building a brand that has to have customer resonance, you need to prove in your local market that you can own that market in that space. If you expand nationally before you've proven local product market fit, you're just going to waste a lot of money because you don't know what your customer really wants from your brand. Two, We had 4,500 retail doors opening April of 2020. Something happened in March of 2020 that kind of messed that all up. And the company actually ended up going bankrupt in July of 2020, which was a really interesting learning experience for me as a co-founder because I'd never been through that before. It also, COVID kind of killed the canned wine category, which is a huge bummer, but we can talk about that another time. So let's take a moment to think about where we are physically, this room. When I started FreeFlow in 2009, I was up here on an island. I was actually living in the city at the time, but FreeFlow had started and was based in Sonoma. And I was commuting 2.5 hours a day because all of the people I needed to talk to about the startup world were in San Francisco, sources of capital, peer groups, all of that. None of this room existed. So you become geographically isolated. There was no ecosystem up here for startups. I had no one to talk to, no network to work with. I had to live this sort of two-part life, commuting to the city, networking, going to mingling down there, and then coming up and spending 14 hours a day building my startup in the North Bay. And that wasn't great. Access to talent. I mentioned this earlier. When we actually opened our corporate office at that point, we'd moved over to Napa for 5 years. I just had trouble finding people. I was recruiting people from San Francisco who were at the stage of life where they were considering the North Bay and just sort of like fishing hook. Come on, it's going to be awesome. Come on up. Or I'd hire them remotely and then eventually convince them to move up here. But we didn't have a talent pool for rapid growth startups in the North Bay that, especially ones where you needed to be physically present. Remote work wasn't as prominent. Technology wasn't there for it in 2010 as it is today. And then finally, a culture of entrepreneurship, particularly a culture of entrepreneurship at scale, right? When we think about entrepreneurs in the North Bay, historically, we thought about smaller businesses. We've thought about regional businesses, but not game-changing businesses, not businesses that are going to completely change the way a consumer interacts with a particular sector. You've heard from companies today, and you will. There's amazing things happening here, and that culture is changing, and this room is proof that that culture is changing. So let's talk about today. There's desire, right? People want to build really cool things. All of you here are interested in entrepreneurship and building. To me, that's something really incredible. I love the build. I love changing the way consumers do something. Think about the wine industry. Think about how we have a cork and a bottle in the presentation, and now it comes out of a tap. There's an amazing restaurant called 60 Vines. If any of you have ever been to one, they're growing, but I helped design that restaurant on a piece of paper with my friend. They now have 14 of them, and it's 60 wines on tap. You walk in, and it is the most incredible experience. And we're talking, there are wines for $45 a glass coming out of a keg. Changing consumer behavior, you have to believe, and you have to have a group around you that believes that you can actually change the way a person does something. And that's desire. That's what we've got. We've got lifestyle. And when I say lifestyle, you've heard a lot of people talk about why they moved to the North Bay. Look around you. It's beautiful here. We have Mount Tam. We have the beach. We have mountain biking, hiking. We have around us. And when I think about culture, Helen was making a joke about Austin. People said, oh, I moved to Austin because, it had a lot of things that were great around it. I'm like, well, we got better. Just saying. And so, but we need to continue innovating and growing here in the North Bay so that more people can move here and more people can appreciate why we all live here. Access to capital. I mentioned, I was going to the city for these meetings and then driving back and forth. I would drive back and forth 2 or 3 times in a day sometimes. I mean, that is awful. And my CEO's group actually is, I didn't see him yet. Is Blair here today? I didn't see him. Blair Kelson, who used to run Traditional Medicinals, and I used to carpool down to the city together for our CEO's group because there was no peer group up here. That was what we had to do to get to peers to build our company. Today, that's here. That's in this room. That's what's being built. And then we have capital. We actually have dedicated capital for the North Bay, and that capital has access to other capital to bring in and actually fund our businesses and grow our businesses. To me, that's huge. So it's this ecosystem that we're creating together that's going to change the way that businesses and people live and interact in the North Bay. And that's why I'm doing the things I'm doing. That's why I'm on the EDB board, which, by the way, is the hardest thing in the world. It's the Economic Development Board. It never comes out right. We're changing the name, by the way. But I believe passionately that we have some of the most incredible people, some of the most incredible businesses, and one of the greatest places in the world to live. And together we can build something incredible in the North Bay. So I'll end with, I'm betting on the North Bay, and I bet most of you in this room are too. So I look forward to chatting with everybody. Thank you very much for having me in today.